Miles, if you could talk about Rachel, that would be lovely. Explain, what she about.
Getting back to the Super Soldier Summit, there was a number of individuals there. Super Soldier sort of refers to, people might think, of big muscular,
yes,
whatever. What they are people who've been programmed and trained in a number of subtle ways. Okay. This is where we get into the manufacture of people with various, what they call alternate personalities.
Yeah.
And it gets all a bit mucky and messy, but we'll leave it at that. Basically, this girl, very nice girl, her story is that she is a manufactured human, test tube, in the underground bases. She's been exposed to a variety of tests which are pretty horrific. For instance, facing down a massive python in a cage, and if you don't face the python down and override its will to eat you, well, you're eaten. It's as simple as that. This is a very serious kind of stuff we're dealing with here. Okay, it's the same way that, for instance, the Spartans would leave children out in the winter, and if they survived the next day, they were hardy enough to be a Spartan. If they didn't survive, well, that's it. Okay.
I'm quite curious how you face down a python.
Well, basically, the kids are put into a big cage with a big python, and you've got to basically make sure you don't get eaten. And what you do and how you do it is going to determine whether you're going to be there,
survive or not.
Okay.
Big snake.
No, I know what they are.
Now, the thing about the big snake is it could also be to do with your DNA and whether you're able to communicate with the reptilian mind of the snake.
Okay.
That could be another little part of that trick. And don't tell me why don't ask me why I know that. The point is...
why do you know that?
Troublemaker. Mystery voice is the troublemaker.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because she's a mystery voice, she thinks she can cause trouble.
Yes.
But we know who she is, and we also know where she lives.
We do.
Right. We're talking serious matters here. Now, she was injected with the black goo into her bone marrow, and after that, well, the reason why it was injected into the bone marrow, I believe, is because that's where the blood cells are created. So it was injected specifically into the part of the body where it will then get everywhere.
Yes.
Ultimately,
yes.
Okay? So the point about this is that when this happens, you're completely tied down. Not just tied down by your wrists, you're actually held down so that your body doesn't react and move. It's a really violent process, from what I gather from her description. So this stuff is then going into every part of her body. She's just, including her eyes, and I would draw, there's basically 3 movies which you could look at, or 3 types of movies to describe what this black goo is doing in the movie world. One is Prometheus, where you have these beads of black goo moving around. These kind of beads of blackness have been witnessed at Harwell in Berkshire, slithering underground.
Okay.
A black fluidic energy. I'm distracting myself again. I saw these in BBC transmitters, 4 BBC transmitters, which we bought second-hand for pirate radio use in Ireland. But that's another thing.
Okay.
The point is that 3 movies. The other one is the X-Files, where a lot of the black goo was referred to in people's eyes. You'd see it moving around and underneath the arms. And the other one, which I think a lot of people have missed, is the way the black goo is in The Day Earth Stood Still, the remake. Okay, the final part of that, where this black substance in the form of some kind of flying insect basically takes all life over it, wipes the whole earth out, resets it. And that is a very strong warning in that movie as to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is, if this isn't itself some kind of disinformation, because we're only dealing with stories here, okay? We're dealing with in stories from the intelligence community, we're dealing with stories from the Russians, we're dealing with stories from the Brits, we're dealing with stories from the Americans, okay? So the problem about the black goo or the sentient fluid is we don't have any samples of it, and if we did, how would we check it's going to work? You'd have to empath and discuss it. And that's why discussing with Alistair, the empathic communication I was getting from Alistair was I really felt I was dealing with another intelligence within Alistair. And that's the only way. But we don't have a meter here that we can plug into Alistair and say this is that, or get a definitive actual clinical thing. So,
and how did you have this with Rachel? Do you feel that you had a telepathic?
Yes, Rachel was definitely very, very telepathic during the course of her interviews. It was very clear that she was able to come up with answers to questions which suited answers to questions and statements she would make based on what I already knew. I've been suspicious about oil for quite some time. I've noticed that oil and petrol in cars seem to have other life forms in it. The reason for that is they seem to be detectable when you put the petrol into the back of the car. And I picked up on this about 10 or 12 years ago. I then concluded relatively recently that it was in fact the jinn that we were dealing with. Now the jinn, there's practically no information about the jinn in Judaic Christian folklore or culture because it's been deliberately taken out.
Sure. Yes.
And one must ask, why have the stories about the ancient beings on earth all been taken out of Judaic Christian culture, the knowledge base? So we have to rely on Asiatic and other countries for data on the jinn. Now basically the jinn were here before humans were brought here by the so-called gods. Okay? They were an indigenous civilization much like us, but they exist in a completely different realm. They're derived of smokeless fire. Okay? So they can shapeshift. They've got so many qualities and abilities, but they're just as good, they're just a living civilization as we are. The difference is that we are made of earth. And the jinn basically felt that we were grossly inferior to them, but the whole purpose of humanity in this very thick, heavy, dimensional state of matter is to see how the soul, the hyperdimensional part of a human being or a life force, works in this physical realm, and whether you can actually get this. So this is meant to be some kind of big experiment. However, the jinn basically turned their noses up at this, and as a consequence, according to the legend, is that, well, God then banished them. They banished the jinn to a different dimension as punishment. The angels, however, the angels are not a civilization all sweet and light, and just because the sort of cherub of goodness, the angels are just like all races of beings, good, bad, and different, different intentions, but they don't exist under the freedom of choice rule that we do. We have got free will, they don't. They have to obey in a sort of like a hive mind. Anyway, the angels said they would help humanity if asked. The jinn didn't, so the jinn were banished. So I surmised that possibly what the jinn were doing was they were using petrol engines as a mechanism for being introduced, breaking or being cracked quite literally in the explosion of the petrol engine and the diesel engine. That release of energy was a mechanism, just as in the lamp, the legend of rubbing the lamp and then the genie comes out of the lamp, the jinn comes out of the lamp, that allowed the jinn to be released into our dimension by a nefarious route, i.e. the explosion of energy in a petrol engine, which drives the petrol engine, and then the smoke coming out of the petrol engine was a mechanism of mass release of jinn into our dimension.
Good God. Okay.
Okay? And that is why there's been so many shadow entities.
I think there'd be a lot of people say this is a far stretch, so...
It's a mechanism where the jinn, who are derived of smokeless fire, could use, if they had been banished into the earth,
I can see that, but how did you come up with this thinking around what trick? There must have been something that kind of set you to think.
It was noticing these black energy forms at the back end of the car.
All right.
And it was the black fluidic energy, intelligent energy, which I noticed in the transmission systems as in pirate radio.
I see, so you made a link between the two things.
Yeah, because in pirate radio, the only way that the transmitters would work in the pirate radio domain was to clear of this black fluidic energy which was in the transmitters, because you could go to refurbishment companies who are cycling out transmitters, and you can actually buy them.
Yeah.
Now you're not going to use them, but you could buy them for use elsewhere. And for instance, one of the transmitters I got was actually recycled back into an independent local station as a backup. It happened to be on their frequency. In other words, it would work for them if they were pushed, because of the way that the radio stations in the UK now can actually operate, own, install their own transmitters.
Okay.
All right. So the point is that transmitters which we got from BBC transmitter sites were absolutely dosed in this black fluidic energy. It was literally as if they'd been literally dropped in crude oil.
Right.
But this was in the etheric domain.
Okay.
And I had a discussion with Alistair, and he completely confirmed and said, yes, the black goo could and would exist, shift its dimensional existence to exist in that domain. Okay?
Okay, but from what I understood, or maybe I misunderstood, is that the black goo it has a positive sort of interaction, or has positive intentions, unless we try and eliminate it in some way.
The black goo is an intelligent, sentient existence.
But how?
Like all intelligence, you can have a nice day or you can have a bad day.
All right. So this particular black goo was not necessarily working for our benefit.
This is a big question. We're now going to enter very dodgy ground in terms of really what the BBC's been doing. Now, the point about this is that we've had a major scandal in this country with regard to a certain popular personality who has fronted popular music through Top of the Pops, which is a mind virus communication device music, right? Let's make that very clear. It's a mechanism for getting secondary signals into human beings, right? One of the most important things about Britain is that dance music was effectively banned, and the only place you could get dance music from was from the BBC. The foreign major broadcasters in the 30s were all essentially outlawed in terms of that you weren't allowed to listen to them. Dance music from Europe into this country, into the British Isles, was not a good thing. Now, as far as British society was concerned. Now, the point about this is one of our research colleagues, Cathy Morgan's done an awful lot of research on mind control in this country, and Great Britain, the British Isles, is probably the single most mind controlled civilization on the planet.
Really? Okay.
And everybody else is relatively sort of catching up. Now, the point about all that is that the music, radio and stuff in the States and television systems are all set up by MI5, according to, I think, Roald Dahl and Ian Fleming, that the broadcast structure in the US was essentially a British intelligence operation, and what was being used in terms of advertising, the tricks, the songs and all that. But in this country, none of that was going to happen here. Now, the significance to this is why Radio Caroline is so important. Now, Radio Caroline happened to use, its head office happened to be in Chesterfield Gardens. The previous tenant was, I think, Kim Philby and that group of spies of the 1950s. Okay? That tends to me to be a wee bit of a coincidence. That a bunch of secret spies, Illuminati spies.
What I do know is it was being rented out at a reasonable price. I know the person that actually found it.
In terms of Chesterfield Gardens for Radio Caroline?
Yes. She calculated that the whole building, they'd rent out the lower part and it would meet their needs and it was plenty of space. She said it seemed, from what she understood, there was quite a few decent properties going in and around that spot, and that was a good price.
The key to Radio Caroline was that it totally changed the culture of popular music in Britain, and it was not a BBC operation.
Absolutely.
The key to this was such a threat that I think within 3 short years the whole lot of these radio stations had to be taken off, and then the BBC was forced finally to transmit popular music. But the point about the popular television personality, which has reached the news since his death, is that this essentially has feelers going to all cultural popular entertainment as broadcast. Now, the point about this is that there are a number of extremely serious allegations in connection with that particular person involving young human beings for various purposes, including high levels of historically ruling elites in this country with regard to very, very disingenuous purposes. It's possible that the black goo, which we're now associating, we're now connecting the black goo with this infestation of BBC transmission systems, and we're also hearing it coming up in telephone exchange systems, that there's a black goo in the connections of electric connections in telephone exchanges. It could actually have been possibly trying to fight this problem.
Interesting.
Right? The problem being we're dealing with very dark forces here, with the view of controlling humanity, and we're dealing with such a severe level of dark entity involvement here that it is a monumental nightmare in terms of civilization on this planet. The black goo, just because it's black doesn't mean it's bad, okay? The black goo is connected with living Mother Nature on this planet. What these elements, which I alluded to before, the only way they're going to, shall we say, as I say, refocus the holographic focus in the matrix, they have to destroy or take control of Mother Nature.
What does the black goo has to do?
No. The black goo looks as if it's resetting life here because it is there's an attack on Mother Nature itself.
Yeah, okay.
Now the evidence for that is we have found that certain targeted individuals, there's a whole phenomena here you've got to get across called targeted individuals, and at the Super Soldier Summit there was a particular doctor who spoke at that conference, specifically dealing with the total control of all electrical stimuli, impulses, and all workings of the human brain. Everything. It is their task, at the Super Soldier Summit, there was a doctor called Dr. Duncan, we just call him Dr. Duncan, and he gave a presentation on how CIA and the relevant agencies have a requirement to have total control of every single electrical impulse and function of the brain. So for instance, you will have super soldiers and they will require you to be on 150% total alertness for 3 days during a mission. And they will switch on and activate your brain completely as total control of everything in your brain. That you will do that, and then you will be totally active for that period of time. Then it will say, right, you have now been active for this period of time. In order to give you rest, you will now rest. Switch, click, boom, you rest. This is the total cessation of free will of all subjugated beings that they're going to do, and that's what they're going to do.
God.
This is Dr. Duncan.
Duncan, this is what he's written a book about all this, and he gave this presentation at the Super Soldier Summit. Now the point about this is these particular people, including the 2045, the Russia2045.com people, think that all life exists as a series of electrical and biochemical impulses and signals in the human brain. They don't think there's any hyperspatial or soul involved here, that the soul and the physical, the bio-existence of life is merely the outcome of a series of electrical stimuli and pulses in the human brain.
And they can see themselves in that way. That's very curious, isn't it?
Yes.
They are also planning to basically transfer human brain function into a chip, into an electronic computer system. You don't need the body anymore. Get rid of all the bodies, and you live and survive as an avatar in an electrical. In other words, they're taking human life from a carbon-based life form and sticking it into a silicon-based life form. A few people might get that round the wrong way. That we've evolved from consciousness in rocks and the ground into the human bio form in terms of carbon-based life forms, and to a higher level of dimensional existence and reality. Well, these guys are going to reverse evolution into a microchip, basically silicon. And if you understand that silicon-based life forms, these things are active. These things are alive, okay? They have a consciousness. They are alive. And this is one of the things they want to do is, quote, why have your mobile phone device here when you can have it in here? So the idea would be then that you would totally exist as basically a life form within a computer server system, where you would not need to use telephones and things like that, but you would just be part of the system and communicate and get all the information you need from the internet. And see, this is another issue, is that the internet is only an evolution of an artificial neural net, which they started with centrally generated electricity. The centrally generated electricity system is a neural net, right? And the point about that is that certain observers have seen these black entity things, like these tendrilic things, in power systems. So it's been described as basically an artificial intelligence, a form of artificial intelligence. All they've done is they've upgraded it to the internet, and they're upgrading it to the cell phone system, and this is a global network. It's an artificial intelligence. It has a consciousness. So the idea is that we are simply going to be transferred into that consciousness. And no need for human corporeal matter. Now, if you don't have corporeal human beings, you don't need the infrastructure of food and all the other civilized, cars, houses.
What I'm curious about, in a way, then why are we incarnated? There's no point.
Don't forget that.
All right.
No, you see, now you're dealing with outside. I'm talking about the Flat Earth Brigade here.
I understand that.
These people actually believe that, they're going to do that, and this is called transhumanization.
Okay. And what's the purpose?
So the point I think we're talking about Sarah here, Rachel.
Okay.
So the point, getting back to Rachel, we've covered quite a lot there in terms of human consciousness. Now, the point about the Radio Caroline situation is that Radio Caroline situation was able to fight or whatever was going on at the Radio Caroline situation and all related radio stations. My part of the Caroline story is that I did an awful lot of pirate radio in Ireland, and that was due to a wake-up of consciousness in the Republic of Ireland, which had been shut down in the north of Ireland with the MI6 use of the IRA to shut down consciousness rising in Belfast, which was happening in the late 1960s. That delayed things in Ireland, and it then started happening in the Republic of Ireland in the late 1970s, and that involved, shall we say, non-human interference from so-called UFO type issues in Ireland, and that was the thing called the intelligence transfer sequence, which they responded to in the Republic of Ireland, and there was a massive leap in consciousness which happened. Okay, that happened essentially with Radio Caroline in British Isles, the UK, in the 1960s.
Well, that was all by Roland O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Instigated.
Now the point about that was that Radio Caroline's philosophy was loving awareness. Rachel, when she was injected with the black goo, fought the black goo and won, not by being terrified, not by fighting it, but by connecting with, in her words, she connected with source and love, the loving awareness. Right? And those are not, she didn't use the term loving awareness, but once she connected with source and love, the love and peace emotion, the black goo completely just stopped. It couldn't take it, it just went. The black, and she describes in great detail how it literally left her in every orifice. She could see it, and if bits that couldn't leave died, withered and died. So she is a direct...
But why would they do that? Why would they leave her? I mean, why would she object to it?
Whatever it
I think the trick is she didn't object to it. She basically...
But then why did they leave her?
It was no longer necessary.
It couldn't operate.
This is very, very important as to whether the black goo's an alien terrible thing is going to kill us, or it's no longer required.
Okay, that's a different take, yes.
The black goo, the Russian businessman, remember the Russian businessman is standing with the black goo all around him, but not touching him. The black goo communicated it is here to clean up.
So it has a job to do.
Yes.
It's cleaning up
if it can't...
Because he was going to help with renewable energy, which doesn't use fuel and oil, that it let him go. It then spread, completely parted, and went back in to the lake. Okay?
He'd already stuck his finger in it.
He stuck his finger in it, and it experienced contact with it, but it didn't stick to him. Okay, it communicated physically, right?
Yes.
With him. So the point about that is that the black goo is here to clean up the problems on the planet. Now, because that girl connected with source and used the love non-hostile.
Yes.
Because remember when this stuff, when it was talking to the businessman, this Russian businessman, it said it will defend itself if it is attacked. So by not attacking, by being completely non-hostile, it then was no longer, in other words, it realized its presence within the girl was not doing her any good, so it left.
Yes.
Quickly. So,
but
again...
It did do her some good though. It did insofar as she came to that realization.
Yes. So this is important. If you respect all other life forms, they don't have any reason to attack.
Hang around.
Right. Now it's still early days on this, girls and boys.
Yeah.
So the point about this is that we have a bunch of no good SOBs who are messing about with things. Okay, and they are trying to invoke and bring elements of the darkness into this world, and it's not a very good thing. The problem is that we seem to have an enemy or another life force, which must destroy or must modify Mother Nature for it to exist here. And that's what's going on at the moment. Now, if that, it's not in any corporeal form or corporeal form. It's not manifest physically. Okay. In order for it to live in a physical world, it must change the holographic focus. That's to say, the physical parameters which generate the wavefront energies which we call matter, and all related dimensional subdivisions and octaves of that. So, for instance, if the holographic focus is disturbed or changed for another living entity of life to change, which is not here, if that is changed, all related subforms and dimensions and all life, everything, will simply, like pulling the knitting out of a cardigan or a pullover, the whole structure of all life in all its relevant subdivisions of dimensional existence will collapse. And this appears to be the situation we now face ourselves, we're now faced with. The point is that it looks as if that this is where we stand or fall in terms of our continued existence. We have a bunch of lunatics who are going to move human life from corporeal existence because essentially they need us out of the way. Okay? They, having got rid of us, will reconnect or readjust the holographic focus so that whatever matter they need to live in will then be reformed in this sector of the multiple universes. And they will then exist. The point about that is that will then just take the whole lot out. This will result in the collapse of multiple universes because the hologram will just fall apart.
I was just going to say, it seems like a complete delusion on their part for them to believe that they can do it.
They are very heavily engineering us out of our existence by using our consciousness. This is why this is what the 9/11 thing's all about. A lot of people argue about 9/11 in terms of who blew the towers up. Was it this or that, or was it the plane or wasn't the plane? That's irrelevant. The point about the 9/11 situation was that there was a series of probability graphs, which I think was Harvard University, but it may not be. I'm not sure. Princeton maybe was it. And Princeton in Harvard anyway. The point is, there were two probability curves. There's a probability curve of random numbers bubbling along. When the first tower went up, there was a spike, and then the probability, the random distribution curve went up, which means something was affecting human consciousness. And the second curve, the second jump, was when the second tower went down. Also, the Earth's magnetic field took a big dip at that time, which means something managed to plug in to the global consciousness and affect it. That is really important. That if they're able to plug into global consciousness and start affecting it in any way at all to that level, that means they can use our collective consciousness to engineer ourselves out of existence. Because our collective perception and cognition has, like the 100th monkey syndrome, it has this, it can create the existence we live in. Now there's a number of individuals who are surmising that they have already done that, and we are already in a completely false reality. We have been very carefully, or in the process of being carefully, essentially moved out of the holodeck into another little cube. And this is demonstrated in Star Trek, where they actually take a whole holodeck symbolically. The holodeck, relatively speaking, is the reality these people are living in. You program them into a little cube, and there you go, sitting, existing in a complete la-la land of what you think is reality. Now there's evidence in that I've noticed, and a number of other people have noticed, is that long distance communication is too quick. The problem with long distance communication is that you should have a delay. A slight delay, but a delay. For instance, in the London stage, if you use a digital microphone, a digital radio mic, there's a sufficient delay in the digital processing of the signal, your voice going into the microphone, then being digitized and then transmitted to the PA system, that people in the audience can hear the delay. Okay? Now that's just one-way communication. So just a simple radio mic has got a sufficient delay that you notice that there's a slight delay, right? In other words, you hear the speakers after the performer's spoken right in front of you. Okay? Now the point about telecommunication systems is that, okay, we're now using fibre optic systems which are stretched across the sea. I suppose the old copper systems, I mean the old copper telephone, you had these huge delays as your voice went from here to the States and then through various repeaters. Well, basically the same thing applies even with fibre optic systems. You're still dealing with computer processing and switching, and that introduces a delay. People then say, oh, we satellite it. If you satellite it, it's still a much bigger delay, a huge delay off a satellite of 2 or 3 seconds. And the digital satellites, digital systems, a huge delay. In other words, a massively noticeable delay of maybe 2 or 3 seconds. Which is witnessed when we used to, at Sky, we would transmit, you'd have the on-air monitor, which is your live monitor from the studio. You then have your analog signals, which come back pretty quick. You then have digital terrestrial. I think digital terrestrial was the slowest because a lot of signals were transmitted by satellite and then digital. So high definition is even worse. That takes even longer to come and go and get back and process and be seen. So the point about this is that, for instance, I texted somebody the other day in the United States, and his reply to that text arrived before I'd actually finished sending the initial text that he replied to.
Good God.
That's interesting.
Now I had a witness to that. Okay, so this was a pretty complicated message about flight times and things, and the reply to that had arrived just like that. There's no way that he could have possibly received that message, read it, and then typed in on his phone and then send back for it to arrive. Just
I had a little bit of an experience of that, and I just started questioning my own mind about it.
No, what's happening is that we're then having superluminal transmission. The superluminal transmission means it is going faster than light. Now, we're told that faster we can't do that. But that only applies if you are in the domain of the physical universe that we think or thought we were in.
Yes.
If, however, we're actually in the same matrix, which is not as big as we think it is, but we're actually sitting in a little cube somewhere, such communication would actually happen instantaneously. So when you're having a long distance telephone conversation with somebody, maybe on a cell phone, to somebody in the United States or some other place, and you're hearing the voice coming back pretty well instantly. For instance, Skype's quite good the way that works. If you're talking on Skype, you're actually going through computer programs, computer networks, switching and processing, yet you can have a conversation. It's too quick.
Okay.
There's a major
I've also
problem.
been hearing that there are some problems.
Now when that goes wrong, you really do get the delays.
Okay.
And anybody who uses Skype these days should understand it is intelligent. You are going to an intelligent system. There is something that is listening. And for instance, it's quite interesting when you talk about certain things and it just starts.
Yes.
That's not somebody who's listening with a pair of headphones on and saying, oh, they've used the wrong word, we're going to affect a keyboard.
Yes.
No. It was quite interesting when a person I was talking to, as soon as he mentioned a gin and they'd shot it, they'd killed it, and there was a physical gin lying dead in the garden, internet cut instantly. Now that means we're dealing with an intelligence within the system itself which is artificial. So we're dealing with artificial intelligences.
And what does a physical gin imply?
Well, I would like to know. It means that it must have translated physically to this reality, which is what they're trying to do.
Okay.
This is what all these men, these shadow people are that they're suggesting are jinn,
Okay.
or some the jinn. The term jinn is referring to other intelligences in other dimensions on
Okay.
this planet.
Understand.
Okay, for want of a better term.
Understood.
And for that reason, we need to become much more knowledgeable about really who was here when we started, what's really going on in those relevant domains. And if those relevant domains are for some reason collapsing, because perhaps the Earth or our section of the galaxy is going through some kind of force field or energy field which is compressing our space-time domains. Everybody's saying, oh, isn't time going faster, all that kind of thing. If our relative space-time domain is collapsing, then the speed of light and all that would be faster in relative terms, because it's got a shorter place to go in relative space-time. So that could be what's going on, which is also why these other elements are sort of crushing through, because the domains are collapsing and the relative spatial density is much higher now, which means that we're all a lot closer together, or weather system. So for instance, if we as a region of space is going through what's called a low pressure system, in other words, we're a lot closer together, or you would call it maybe a high pressure system, but anyway, the point is that we have weather comes and goes, we have storms, we have various things in a weather system. So if you're going through a similar kind of storm in space-time density, and the region of space is effectively having a bit of a bad day in terms of a weather or storm system, we would notice it in terms of things like speed of light being a bit faster than it should be. Possibly. So the main thing is, if you're dealing with the black goo and you are afraid, as with the serpent in the tent, not the tent, the serpent in the cage with the child, this girl who survived it, it's a case of turn the other cheek, don't be hostile, and then you will translate through. You'll be okay. But if you become fearful and you start being hostile to it, then it will directly reflect your hostility. And this is what some people are saying is the black goo actually is. It's being manifest by our consciousness, and our consciousness is again being deliberately manipulated to create it, so it will end up destroying itself.
So it's interesting. So the more fear and paranoia we develop.
Yes, and that's why all these terrible things where these children are being abused in the schools and these homes, and they're pushing this energy, this terror, this fear, this trauma being pushed into the Earth's energy grid to poison Mother Nature. But this is affecting not only here, it's affecting other realms, and these other realms are trying to fight about it. And this is what the information we got from a certain individual who we did a case study on. And that's what the targeted individual situation is about.
Right.
This Dr. Duncan referred to interviewing over 900 targeted individuals to get this data that they're using in terms of dealing with total takeover of human brain.
So they were basically scanning and monitoring their brain activity and influencing.
It means that the targeted individual syndrome is pandemic across society. That they are using the population at large for multiple experiments of various things, so they can get this information back from the point of view of totally controlling humanity with total absolute control.
Something recently happening a lot is that I've been aware of for a long time, but it's come up quite a bit. It's about how many people seem to believe that they are the incarnation of Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
And there's one who's got a whole following in Australia, But this is occurring with a lot of patients that are considered mentally ill. So they're picking up this information because it's just so many of them. But I do remember talking to someone about 30 years ago on this.
David Shaler is a classic example. For him to be an ex-MI5 agent, go do Lally, and then turn into I'm a Jesus Christ type person is very serious.
So there must be kind of, they're targeting a lot of people with the same info.
So in other words, we need to really pay a great deal of attention. It's our consciousness, our perceptions which are under attack here. And those who have been running the show need to be brought to book on this. And I'll say no more.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask about Rachel? Because...
Yeah.
Okay. Besides her being injected and also being in the cage with a snake, what does she see her purposes? Is she working for the Black Ops or
the cage thing is something which has been described a great deal by James Casbolt and the other super soldiers.
That's true, but I'm wondering what is her position now?
And
is she free or is she still under control?
Well, this is something which we have to really look at very carefully, because it seems that at that summit that all the super soldiers, 18 people in total, were taken and reprogrammed in the trip seats which these individuals are put into. And the trip seat is a bit like a dentist's chair, and was first mentioned by Barry King in an operation in the underground bases in Berkshire.
Okay.
And we've got to really link very closely to the transhumanization bases in Berkshire and Wiltshire. That's to say the base under AL499, that's the Peasmore base. And this is where we're connecting into the Fourth Reich situation and these new bases which are now being set up with the full holographic projection technology. Now, when I say holographic projection technology, it ain't hologram. It's actually a recreation of an artificial reality, which for all intents and purposes is a reality, because it's so real you can touch, feel it and see it. So what they're doing is they don't need big surveillance towers and borders. They simply project a reality which is sufficiently good to extend over large geographical areas and hide a full secret facility. And I've talked to people who've actually gone up to the barrier, the zone areas of these things, and what's happening is that they've got these spheres about the size of a football, and these objects can float around, but they hide them in trees, and they then, when they're active, they will produce a reflection or a similar reflection of the surroundings. So they will be practically invisible or difficult to see, whereas with all disguises, once you notice it, you can see it. But if you're not looking for it, you will effectively not notice it. Because it's basically using the surroundings to
as in Avatar. Scene, didn't they, where the creature or the other reality became invisible? Or almost invisible.
The thing about it is, as with all of these things, as with any form of camouflage, it's the edges, and that's why you just stand still. And then the other life forms won't see you, but as soon as you move, it'll see an outline, it'll see a different, subtle difference, and that's why the human eye, for instance, we have a different set of cells on the outside of the eye, and that's looking for edge recognition, because you'll see the edge change first. We have a problem that when we stare at something, we then shift to the low resolution part of our eyes. Our eyes are low resolution in the central part where we're looking at. But that's where we see colour.
Okay, but I'm curious. Now, Rachel, who seemed like a nice lady, she voluntarily went off to sit in a chair in this truck.
No, they were taken. They were taken in a time loop, in a localized space-time loop, and they were all taken straight down for reprogramming.
All right, I'm trying to understand. So
it's not a voluntary thing. They're sort of pulled in.
they're pulled in, so they don't know it's happening to them. They just suddenly find themselves walking after this truck.
They're all. James Casbolt is who basically escorted them down 2 or 3 at a time out of the hotel rooms, and they were reprogrammed in the trip seat or checked out or whatever happened to them. Don't know what happened to them. So in fact, we don't even know if that actually happened. But the problem is with the time loop that you've got to watch the subtle details. The time loop thing is when they can take you out for as many hours as they want and bring you back and reconnect you with the time that you left. The problem is, for instance, you'll notice that maybe this phone is here right now, and then you suddenly realise the phone's over there.
Okay.
And you only got that brief second to notice the difference.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got to look at the mistakes. For instance, the cut moves, or it's in the wrong place, something, and you've only got that brief second of noticing. So you noted, or I assume this, that all the super soldiers did not seem to be totally within their own mind, a mind of their own. They're not. They'll be switched onto different altars and controlled.
Okay.
This is the point about the super soldier problem. It's not a problem. You're dealing with completely controlled individuals who operate with different personalities and alters. Now, I have for a long time not completely accepted James Casbolt's story, right? Because I thought, this guy, he's definitely the real deal, but to meet another guy just like him, Max Spears, and for those two guys to be sitting there with the same scars and the same things, and so the point about these, you've got two individuals, both British, both been through the run-of-the-mill stuff here in this country, and there they are sitting in the United States in what was, by all intents and purposes, effectively an intelligence operation. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Super Soldier Summit that I was at was basically a little bit of intel sitting there, and we got information that there were other prominent people in the field, shall we say, who are familiar with non-lethal weapons technologies, who were there but were not there in physical form.
Right, okay. Interesting.
Basically every single lecturer that was there, this is a small group of individuals, abductees, contactees, mind control people, synthetic telepathy victims, targeted individuals, basically a pretty good mixed match of people who've been exposed to a variety of these sort of technologies, and I was there as well. Okay. Oh dear, what does happen?
I suppose what puzzles me with Casbolt is that he did all the early interviews, and it was almost like, well, I've been through these terrible things where I've been raped and everything under the sun has happened to me, including at that time I think it was his fiancée, and they're kind of...
She's a monarch.
But I got the impression that they were coming out to basically step away from this whole setup.
No,
yet they're completely gone back into it and even bring their child through that. So are they accepting that their child is going to go through what they went through?
This is, for instance, from James Casbolt. Just sent you the NSA letter to you. It's under a different email. That email, with all that, were wiped out when I was in the States. I lost about 2 or 3 days of emails. Months have been spent destroying files at Dulce, hence the letter that the NSA has sent to him, which he sent to me, denying him officially, right? And then we have this reference to the Bigfoots. Now let's see if I get the... right, that's not here. There's the series of... right, okay, what happened afterwards when they left. These are text messages from Max the Super Soldier. I was in his dream. Dreamed of you last night. You were leaving to go to Florida. I was warning you to be careful there. Now the point about that little reference was that 3 or 4 days later there were some issues in Florida which I was being asked to attend to. Okay? After the conference, this is now after the it wasn't a conference, it was a summit.
Yes.
I'm telling you
yes.
that. The nameless person that we can't speak about. The mysterious voice. Okay, Michael, Haley and Sarah and I were in a sex ritual in a suite at the top of the Encore Hotel. I think that's in Las Vegas, or it could have been in Dallas.
This is Michael's
Haley.
wife.
Yeah.
And with whom?
Michael is Michael Prince.
Yes.
Haley Mayer is his wife.
That's yes.
The other girl is the lovely girl that I interviewed, and Max were involved in a sex ritual in a suite at the top of the Encore Hotel. The girl that I referred to woke up in the middle of it. She tried to get my attention and they panicked and put her back under. She was wearing a black top hat and wasn't involved, just observing in a daze. A woman in her 50s with red hair was leading this ritual, somehow connected to the governor in some way. The governor is the guy who was saying he was going to be the next governor of Nevada, and he was there on the Friday night and came on after Kerry Cassidy had her show. And also Kerry Cassidy referred to the spider type creatures which I've been referring to in the past. She had seen a group of 5 of them walking, running around in a sort of direction. She referred to them as some kind of spiders of the Matrix, creatures of the Matrix, which seed the Matrix. So that's a little example of what happens after the summit and how the way that they're being pretty gruesomely treated.
Right. But still, these super soldiers are really just the puppets.
Well, a soldier is always a puppet of the controller.
Yeah.
Yes. And do they talk about their controllers at all?
No. I've got some nice pictures of them which we can use later on, but
of the super soldiers or the controllers?
No, of the super soldiers. Let's see if I can get this. It's no, it's not in that one.
I suppose I'm curious, the summit has been organised, or who organised it, and they've been parading these people around.
Well, no, they weren't being paraded. No, they were being taken. Let's see if I can get this. Okay,
like
there.
Basically, who led them out 3 at a time.
I understand.
Yeah.
I imagine that they
James Casbolt. There's James Casbolt there. We just we can probably stick that in again.
Okay.
So James was there with Haley, but didn't speak. And you'll notice that none of the 3 or 4 of them are not actually looking at the camera. They're deliberately looking away from the camera so they don't blink.
Why? Why is that? What's the blinking?
Well, people who don't want to be seen properly stay away from the camera. Consciously.
Yeah, but where does the blink come in?
Well, the point is they'll blink. If you look at these characters here, they're not actually looking. Now there's the girl, that's Sarah.
Yeah.
No, that's girl.
Let's have a look.
Rachel.
Rachel, yes.
Oh God, it doesn't matter anymore. She just wanted to be known as, and they're not looking. They're looking away.
Yeah.
Quite consciously looking away from the camera during the photograph, which means that they are trying to hide something, and this is one of the things you do if you want to hide some.
Okay.
You can't. It makes it more difficult to read, apparently. Although Haley's in there looking great.
Okay.
Okay.
Because there are on the net.
Who is this?
The girl on the left there, the blonde girl, is from Texas, and she is not hypnotically, but she is totally controlled by Duncan to be in love with him. And she will switch when Duncan's around. She just completely falls in love with him. And
Duncan is the scientist.
Dr. Duncan, the scientist.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has programmed her to fall in love with him.
Okay.
The other girl there is Solaris Blue Raven, and she has been standing up against the terrorism against individuals for this synthetic telepathy.
Yes.
Where criminal elements are now using synthetic telepathy technology to terrorize and basically traumatize people.
Girl. But talking about the girl that's in love with
Duncan.
Duncan, yes. What's
She's a
he like?
broadcaster. Duncan?
Yes, because
Duncan,
this sort of seems a bit dodgy to kind of...
He is dodgy, but the point is, this is a guy who has written a whole book about this. He's trying to sort of talk this whole subject up. And he's good fun. He's absolutely a brilliant intelligence officer. I don't know if he's actually technically an intelligence officer, but he's quite clearly really investigating total control of the human mind for complete total control of human beings. Everything.
And if you were to throw up the argument, do you think this is ethical, or, you know, do you really want to...
Ethics does not enter into this.
But does this not seem a little bit, let's say, robotic, in the sense that there is no... becomes very without colour, without feeling, without anything?
These people are pathological control freaks. This is a planet of choice. It's a planet of free will. These people have they cannot take free will. They will not deal with it. Now what they're doing is that they're being very, very clever in using our free will against us by you giving your permissions away.
Yes.
This is the whole thing about alien abduction. This is the whole thing about the whole thing. You are effectively giving your permissions away. If you deny them that permission, if you deny that we're going to allow this to happen, which is why the Illuminati have to tell us what they're going to do. And by accepting that and not doing anything about it, you have given them permission to carry it out. If you say, no, you're not going to take us over, no, you're not going to do this, get out of my head, you've invaded my head with your signals, whatever it is, you push them away. This was demonstrated by a British spy who was recruited in Northern Ireland. He described to me in great detail how he was flown for 3 hours to a particular place where he met a non-human. Don't keep using the term alien, just you're talking about a non-human entity.
I understand.
This being who was in control, he walked in, the humans walked behind him, or it walked in, whatever you want to call it. It started going straight into his mind. You could feel it going through your mind. You can feel this when it happens. It's like 1,000 fingers just going through every part of your mind, as if there's actually fingers right inside underneath your skull going in there. Well, basically, he was able to reject this invasion of his mind and basically tell it to back away off. Violently get out of my head with a strong thought impulse, and this thing then got out.
Yeah, okay.
So the point is, you have got autonomous control, you have got freedom of will, you have choice, and you've got to exercise your choice by defining your boundaries, by stopping these invasive things from coming in, and maintaining those boundaries.
Okay. Well, that's good information,
and
I think.
Go into any form of contract with these beings. They will fool and trick you into doing something, into engaging in some kind of a contract. It could be something very simple at first.
I would say that all contracts are null and void with trickery.
Yes.
There is an unfair contract law.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is by definition an unfair. Anyway, so the point about this is, if you stand your ground, we are all autonomous individual beings with free will, and you stand by that and you maintain that, and then these controllers, you want total control, thereby controlling our reality, to make it their reality, and thereby ultimately, if we do not stand our ground, we literally will engineer ourselves out of existence.
Okay.
Okay, cup of tea time?
Yes.